एबे सर सुबिला
ठीक है हां एबे ठीक आसला एबे आसला ठीक ही
अच्छा अच्छा और टिके बोधे नेटवर्क प्रॉब्लम अछि कोन आज अच्छा ओके ओके आई एम ट्राइंग माय लेवल बेस्ट सर
okay sir it's okay now
okay so welcome to all the learners for the counseling class or IGNOU that second year MGPE that 7 and today we will finish the MGP 7 all the that left subjects so from that we will discuss today the unit 11 to 16 so the 11 unit 11 that is that silent valley and it is coming under the environmental issues. Dear student, before I discuss in detail about that silent valley, that I want to say something that this particular unit that traces the effort to save that silent valley, a rich natural capital area that was on the verge of being exploited for a hydroelectricity project. Similarly, that the unit is at 12. So it examines the struggle of a local community in its fight to retain and restore the right to water and its struggle against a multinational company. So, okay, in the next that unit 30. So, dear learner, please that mute your audio video. So, in that unit 13 to 16, it is coming under the block 4. So, which that speaks about the global non-violent movement, and it brings forth a host of haunting issues like civil rights movement in America, Greenpeace movement in Europe, anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and the solidarity movement in Poland. The American civil rights movement are mostly related to the rights pertaining to the African and Americans. As you know, this in detail, there are other movements which different communities have come out with for gaining legitimate rights. This is dealt at length in Unit 13. So, the environmental issues have been prominent all over the world, and the Greenpeace International is undertaking a massive effort to raise the awareness level of peoples across the world. So, similarly, the anti-apartheid movement, my dear learner, I want to inform you, just I am giving the touching point, what is the unit and what particular theme it is. The anti-apartheid movement, which was included in your that particularly unit 15, which has brought forward such luminaries as Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, is one of the long-standing movement of the people against discriminatory policies of the white rulers regime. The solidarity movement in the unit 16 that initially started as a labor struggle snowballed into a movement of significance of Poland. The non-violent struggle ended long pending issues and heralded a new regime in Poland. So the unit deals with the movement in details. So, while the above mentioned case studies reflect the subject to a certain extent, so dear learners are requested to refer to further source of given in the list of the suggested reading. Anyway, so now we will start the unit that 11, that Silent Valley, that but that movement. It is also an that environmental issue. So you see, in the post-war period, this was the strong faith in the development model. Before I go in detail about this unit, I want to inform you that Silent Valley, it is an important that environmental issue. That it is the issue of Kerala government when the Kerala Electricity Board decided to construct a project to produce the hydroelectricity current. So it affected a large that environmental area, and which was an important the biodiversity. So when the Kerala government, without discussing with the local people, started its work. So the Adivasis and the local people in that area, they started campaign against this project, and finally it was banned by the government of India. That the then Prime Minister Morarji Desai also helped a lot. So anyway, the Silent Valley, that particularly project, the Silent Valley is a environmental national park to save this area and its geography and its particularly natural resources. Not only the local people, but also the nationwide the people, those who had taken initiative for various environmental issues, they also extend their hand. So in the post-Gandhian perspective, the movement was totally a non-violent one in a non-political space. So in this Silent Valley movement, what is the real fact I want to express? In the post-war period, there was a strong growth in the development models proposed by the West. Most of the developing countries followed these dominant modes without any question. In India, the large dams were viewed as the icon of development. So that means in the name of development, so various biodiversities in India as well as the world were particularly destructed. So most benefit series of this development model in India were the big farmers and the industrialists. So under these circumstances, the traditional communities were totally marginalized, and they were silence in the name of that nation building and development. In the process, they were evacuated from their that homeland without any proper railway station. When any project was started in their areas, that the local people, particularly the Adivasis and the particularly Silent Valley, that inhabitants, nearer inhabitants, they evacuated from their homeland without any proper rail station or compensation from the government. The most victimized among these sections are Adivasis and other deprived that sections. So a large deforestation had taken place in the name of development in different that parts of India. The destruction of the forest and the building up of huge dams resulted in the drying of many water abundant river and other water bodies and ultimately deprived the local communities of their that livelihood. So in this context, we are discussing here the success story of an environmental protection movement, that is the Silent Valley in the that Palghat district. Palghat district of Kerala against the proposed hydroelectricity project during the late 1980s. The movement was that locally initiated with the that starting support from the civil society, and later on it was taken up by the Kerala Shastra Sahitya that Parishad, the people's that science movement of Kerala, and finally the government was forced to that abandon the project. In a post-Gandhian perspective, the movement was totally a non-violent one in a non-political space. The movement in the Silent Valley is noted for its non-political character and admitted for its seminal contribution towards creating awareness among the people on the importance of the protecting the evergreen forest, that Silent Valley. But the we see that what is the importance of this uh, Silent Valley? এবং କାହିଁକି ତାକୁ ନୀରବ ଯୋଉ ଉପତ୍ୟକା ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଉଛି? So we'll see that this Silent Valley National Park is one of the last that undistributed rainforest and tropical that most evergreen forest in India. The park is located in the Nilgiri hills of Palghat district of Kerala, South India. The first English that intrusion into the wastelands of the Silent Valley area was in 1847 by the British Robert Wade. The British, I mean, it was Silent Valley, it was that this name was given by the Britishers. That the British named the area Silent Valley because of a that perceived absence of noisy that cicadas, that means insects city. So it is estimated to have that continuous record of not less than 50 million years of evolution. So in 1914, the forest of the Silent Valley area was declared a reserved forest. So however, from the 1927 till 1976, the portions of the Silent Valley forest area were subject to forestry operation. So that we have to that see the real importance of the Silent Valley for which that movement was started, and how it took the final say, and the government forced to that stop the project, that is the hydroelectricity project by the that Kerala Electricity Board, under the pressure of the government of India. When the government of India that authorize in a particular that biologist to inquire the matter that how far it will save our that environment and the biodiversity. So when he gave the report, so finally the project was stopped. So this is the main that thrust areas. So just will just give some eye view regarding the very importance. Kaiki ame ei jo silent valley ro kon geographical এবং that environmental importance ଅଛି ଏବଂ କାହିଁକି ଲୋକମାନେ ଏବଂ some environmentalist activists ଯୋଉମାନେ ବିରୋଧ କଲେ ଯେ ଏଠି ହାଇଡ୍ରୋ ଇଲେକ୍ଟ୍ରିସିଟି ପ୍ରୋଜେକ୍ଟ ନ କରାଯାଉ କାରଣ ଏକ ବିରାଟ ବଡ଼ ଯେ ଆମର ବାୟୋଡାଇଭରସିଟି ନଷ୍ଟ ହେବା ସହିତ ଏଠି ଯୋଉ ମାନେ ଏଣ୍ଡେଞ୍ଜର୍ଡ ସ୍ପେସିସ୍ ଯୋଉଟା କି ସବୁ ବିରଳ जो स्पेसीज गुड़ाक देखा जाती से नष्ट हो आग्रारियन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू रिसर्च हुए जो किसी जो पेडी हाइलिंग दैट राइस जो पेडी गुड़ाक जो से रिसर्च करा जाए से वंचित हम जोटा कि साधारण लोक तथा परिवेश को यथेष्ट परिमाण में अफेक्ट कर So anyway, that first area, just I want to inform you that this valley situated in Kerala, it has a core area of 89.52 kilometers. That area is that 89.52 kilometers square kilometer. So some rare species, area, and some rare species have found in this national park named the flora and fauna. And the another important that thing is in this valley adequate amounts of rainfall happen during the particularly monsoon season. Besides this valley is famous famous many rare species of birds and animals that bird life that international that listed 16 bird species in that silent valley as active windows. So just giving the presentation. So another thing is that the importance is the mammals in the valley include that gaur and the largest of that all that wild cattle, over 128 species of the butterflies and 400 species of that moths live here. So there is a huge another important is that hollow the Catalan tree and here which can fit 12 people from the human history. About 10% of the genetic stock found in the wild has been that bred into the that palatable and higher yielding that cereals and fruits of vegetable. And apart from this, the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Research Indian Council of Agriculture Researchers. So, and the Plant Exploitation and Collection Division has identified the Silent Valley as a high in biodiversity and in important green pool that resource for recombination of DNA innovation. So, all these into accounts, the environmentalists fight against the government to save the Silent Valley, the evergreen forest in the Kerala region. The aim of the movement was to save that place from being that flooded due to hydroelectricity project. So the region for a Silent Valley. The Silent Valley got world attention not because of its that rich natural diversity, but the successive that struggle of the native people against the that proposed hydroelectric project in the valley by the Kerala Electricity Board. So one such incidental was the Silent Valley environmental movement. The Silent Valley is the India's largest stage, the tropical evergreen forest situated in the Palghat district of that North Kerala. The movement started in 1973 to protect the Silent Valley that reserve forest from hydroelectricity project. तो हाइड्रोइलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्रोजेक्ट न करा जाए एभली जो संरक्षण जो ए जो भैली रो जो संरक्षण एवं जो जंगल को केमि सुरक्षित करा जिवो सेति पई जो सेटिकार लोक माने मूवमेंट बा कैंपेन आरंभ कले. So it is very clear that authorities who proposed the dam construction have not taken into consideration the kind that destruction that would set in motion in the entire geographical area. तो जेतले प्रोजेक्ट पई हला सेतले ए जो प्रोजेक्ट हला पर यार जो क्षति कोन हो सेता जो प्रोजेक्ट रो जो सैंक्शन अथॉरिटी एक कथा होची चिंता करि नथिले जोति पई जे मूवमेंट स्टार्ट हला. तबे दैट व्हाट इज द मूवमेंट अगेंस्ट द दैट प्रोजेक्ट when the Kerala Electricity Board काई केमिति भाबरे हला देखिबा. When the Kerala Electricity Board that started construction work in that proposed area, a vigorous public debate had taken place about the project. The science community became more aware of the need for intensifying the resistance movement or protecting the rich diversity of the Silent Valley. Basically, scientific that science that community. Semane odhika parimanare sachetan ethipai hele. The movement was first initiated by the local people and then taken over by the that Kerala that Shastra Sahitya Parishad, and it is that generated public opinion against the project. जो जहाँ को हमें कौनती जे KSSP Kerala that Shastra Sahitya that Parishad. So it took initiative and propagated this particularly the preservation of Silent Valley throughout to Kerala and also throughout to the country. So it had sent a memorandum to the Kerala government about the issue and problem involved. But even the student community also rose against the proposed that project for the protection of the environment. So I think it is the first in the history that a student have raised the raised against a environmental issue. So as a result of the massive campaign by that Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, the government of India appointed कौन हला देखिवा the movement हला project हला विरोध हले campaign ମଧ୍ୟ हला ଏବଂ finally result कौन हला होची देखिवा ତେଣୁ we have to touch is a result of the massive campaign by the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, the government of India appointed Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. तामने आ भितरे अनेक सो मूवमेंट हला नॉन वायलेंट मूवमेंट हला एवं repressive measure was taken by the Kerala government. Even Kerala government that he told I have just taken the permission from the government, but it was proved that no recommendation has been that issued by the central government. So all these things. But finally, what happened? That the government of India appointed Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, a leading that plant that genetist and agricultural scientist to inquire about the issue. He visited the Silent Valley area and suggested that 389.52 kilometers square kilometer, including the Silent Valley, 89.52 kilometers reserve forest should be developed into a national rainforest biosphere that is reserve. So after the recommendation of Swaminathan to the government of India, what happened? We'll see. That in 1983, the central government instructed to the Kerala government to abandon the project, and on November 15th, the Silent Valley Forest were declared as a national park. So, though it was inaugurated in the year 1985, but in September 1st, 1986, Silent Valley National Park was designated as the core area of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. So since then, a long-term conservation of a forest has been undertaken to preserve the Silent Valley ecosystem. तेणु जो Silent Valley रो जो एरिया तार जो इकोसिस्टम जो अछि से इकोसिस्टम यदि नष्ट होता केवल केरला नु एवं यह सारा भारत वर्ष को मध्य एफेक्टेड करता तार जो जोग्राफिकल इंपोर्टेंस अछि तार जो बायोडाइवर्सिटी एरिया अछि तार जो अछि दैट एंडेंजर दैट स्पीशीज जो माने से माने सब सेठी अछंती एवं इट इज ए रिसर्च प्लेस all these things. So anyway, thus from the above analysis, it can be concluded that the Silent Valley movement was in several ways that crucial to other environment movement in India. The innovative contribution of the Silent Valley that movement is that it educated people regarding the importance of environmental protection. कारण ये जो दिया गला हमरो मोबिलाइज करा हला एवं मीडिया रे जतले प्रचार हला तो साधारण लोक माने जानि परले जे ई जो प्रकार एक एनवायरमेंटल जो इशू एवं ये एनवायरमेंट हम पई केवली भाबरे दरकार एंड इट इज फर्दर realize that effective environmental protection can be achieved only through the active participation of local people in collaboration with the science community and with the committed involvement of civil society. तेणु जनागला जे साधारण लोक को तर सहयोग रे किबळी भाबरे एबळी एक दैट सबु जीवा को बा उटे हमन एनवायरमेंटल दैट संरक्षण करा जाई पारिबो. So it is very clear that the rejuvenation of Gandhian, that developmental discourse, is the need of the hour or need of the time. So this was the Silent Valley, that movement, and so which that said a large, that by that conservation, that is forest conservation, and also the biosphere reserve. Hmm. So next, the water conservation movement. Hmm. Water conservation movement is the that another, that topic. Hmm. Okay. So water conservation movement. So generally, dear learner, you see, the without water there is no life. This is the slogan today. Hmm. So water is the main source of life. So without which no man can live in the lap of nature. So due to the materialistic and also the unnecessary use of water, the water resources is also threatening. Hmm. And it may be, hmm, it may be shortage in the near future, like other resources. Some, that learner or some student may argue that it is a that renewable, that natural resources, but you see, the deforestation and the misuse of water, and the people are not aware regarding the recharge of water. That means a renewable process. So there is every possibility of the shortage of water. And the, you see, in the various areas, they are that facing that difficulties to get clean water. So, dear learner, you might have heard the problem in Odisha, particularly the Balangir district, and also Sonpur. That water is supplying from Sonpur to Balangir. Hmm. And so they are very much conscious about the, particularly the water. And how water can be uh, conserved. Similarly, we see in the headline of newspapers in so many tribal areas. So they are getting the, particularly water, drinking water in the river, and also we see that which is called the some chuas. The mane gote जंगल रे गोटे जगह रे बाली खोली पकेले जो पानी आसीबो सेइथरु से होची पानी माने पीवा को सुजो पड़े. And you may also found from the Rajasthan also. Rajasthan ले मध्य से बड़ी पानी रो अभाव मध्य अधिक अछि. तो ये कथा कहबार उद्देश्य होची जे the present situation alarming us to conserve the water in a different ways and means, so that the Earth planet will, the life in the Earth planet can be sustained. এই কথা হচ্ছে মুখ্য কথা এতিরে আছে এবং ওয়াটার কনজারভেশন কাহিকি এবং ওয়াটার কনজারভেশন মুভমেন্ট কাহিকি মানে ହେଇଛି এবং কিভাবে ভাବରେ দুইটা মুভমেন্ট যে রাষ্ট্রীয় জল চেতনা যাত্রা ଆଉ ଯୋଉ ପ୍ଲାଚି ମଦା କ୍ୟାମ୍ପେନ୍ ଇ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ କରିଛି ଯେ particularly water conservation ପାଇଁ. So So in this particular unit, we will see that water is a fundamental. Water is right and fall of civilization. Water is continually that is the particularly society about interaction to be found in the environment and of a need for ecology based perspectives. Water quantity and quality are to the well-being of each and every society. The state can no longer be the sole authority on natural resources without taking into the consideration the interest of people. The state could control these resources only by that ensuring uh, their entities or disrupt the traditional supplies. Now, the Supreme Court of India, as well as the various high court issued that verdict that the right of enjoyment of the pollution of free water now assess clean drinking is fundamental right, a part of the right to life in Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. But right to water, the three generation of right. Simply, third generation of right, which is environment ପାଇବ ଏବଂ water ଅଧିକାର third generation ତାକୁ so the right to would in the third generation of right is water is a subject of the environment and its situation and use the falls within scope the if people right if the right to then the water to be telling people have a right to water, then water needs to be other and water bodies and institutions such as laws governing its use, treatment of water, waste disposal mechanism is set up to the regulator such use. That now we will see that the importance of water conservation. The water conservation, the point is important. তার গুরুত্ব কোন হচ্ছে সাস্টেইনেবিলিটি কই দেখিবা time that giving the that in a short way of understanding the conservation of water is important. Why? Not because it keeps water pure and clean while protecting the environment. Conserving water means using our water supply that wisely and be responsible. Yes, every individual need water for livelihood. It's not it. Then we must learn how to our limited supply of water pure and away from the pollution. किमिति या माने शुद्ध जल आमे पाइबा एवं किभली भाबरे या दूषित होबन. So this is the responsibility of the user. That means the individual. The most obvious reason for conservation is that protect and promote biodiversity. ये भी मध्य गोटे गुरुत्वपूर्ण जो कारण जदि वाटर कंजर्वेशन वाइल्ड लाइफ पाइबे सोचिबे এবং ଆମ ଯୋଉ ରହିଛି ବାୟୋଡାଇଭରସିଟି କୁ ଆମେ ଡେଭଲପ କରିବା ସେଟା ମଧ୍ୟ ଏବଂ ବାୟୋଡାଇଭରସିଟି ଯଦି ନ ରହିବ ତାହେଲେ ବଞ୍ଚିପାରିବ। We are not interconnected with the biodiversity, and it is quite difficult on the part of the human to sustain in the that. Next, how to conserve water resources. The following is we have देखिबा ये even just collected the points that check your for leakage. Stop using your toilet as an that and put a plastic bottle in toilet. Water having our heads flow that resistance. Turn the water while at brushing your teeth and water your lawn only when it needs. Plant drought resistant trees and plants. Put a layer of that mulch around the trees and plants. So this is the very simple. This is simple, but that is save water and the conserve water. Then how to conserve water? Then particularly conserving water is not difficult. It is that saves money as is crucial. Water conservation is to be that reduction in use of water. That means the reduction in uses of water. It can also include that recycling of water for that purpose, like irrigation, that cleaning, and even the treatment for later use. So that besides the rainwater harvesting, that recharging of water for further sources and awareness among the people at large. So it is also necessary. How to conserve? Just the use. We can also conserve water in a different way, like rainwater harvesting. Suppose rainwater माने कंजर्व करा जाय परियो माने छत ऊपर पानी तो पानी की रिजर्व करी रखि परियो एंड यू सी द पब्लिक fuel माने create a that hole so that the wastewater will be that collected there and for reach. हमें राजस्थान में जो प्रोजेक्टଥିଲା जे गोटे जे पानी की जे चलरे पंचायत लागला
हेलो 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 सर
ओके आर यू लिसनिंग मी
हेलो सर वॉइस ब्रेक आसी
हेलो
सर वॉइस ब्रेक आसी
हेलो
सर वॉइस ब्रेक आसी
वॉइस डेड आसी
सर ब्रेक होची
वॉइस डेड आसी
आज्ञा
हेलो
हां सर
अच्छा ओके आई एम जस्ट आई एम ऑब्जर्विंग
आज्ञा थैंक यू सर
सर ये वॉइस ब्रेक हो जी पिला जदी
एला की ठीक है एबे
नहीं मधुर ब्रेक हो जी हम जो मोबाइल टा आगु जोड रखतले रखना दी
ओके अच्छा
जोड़ी नेटवर्क आसो से पोजीशन
ना मु तो आज एथिरे करछि लैपटॉप रे करछि हां हां अछि तो एबे सुबिला सर हेलो
हां हेलो
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 एबे सर सुबिला की ठीक
सुबिला जे
एबे सर ऑडिबल हैला
कट जाउ
हेलो
हेलो
ओहो अच्छा अच्छा जस्ट
हेलो
सर सर मु टिके देखुछि कोट कोट प्रॉब्लम अछि मु टिके देखुछि
नहीं ए पोजीशन रे
हेलो
ठीक होजी
हेलो
हां हेलो
ठीक है सर ए पोजीशन रे ठीक अछि
हेलो
हेलो ए पोजीशन रे सर ठीक अछि त
हां ठीक अछि
हेलो
ओके सर ओके ओके
ओके ओके hello now it is right hello hello hello
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
sir no, are you listening hello now my voice is clear or not hello so then we'll see that so how to conserve water so besides the that daily practice so other ways we can also conserve water for future that conservation like particularly that rainwater harvesting and we can also use that agricultural that well when rain will that continuously then in the agricultural field we can also dig well for the agricultural purpose and also for recharge. So National Water Conservation Policy 2002, for which that National Water Policy is formulated by the Ministry of Water Resources of the Government of India to govern the planning and development of water resources and their optimum utilization. The first National Water Policy was adopted in the September 1987 and it was that reviewed and that updated in 2002 and later on in 2012. So we see that struggle for water that security that there are movements in the civil domain for the conservation of water. One could observe two that particularly various particular versions of the activism, namely a well-defined cooperation between the state and the civil society for water conservation and that initiative of a civil society to protect resource without any help from the state. So, as an example, in the Madhya Pradesh government has made attempts to create a cooperative relation between state and the civil society to check the that water crisis. A people's movement for water conservation, that is Jal Abhishek campaign, in which the community become the active participation of water conservation. For this, a workshop for village sarpanch on the importance of water conservation was also conducted. So here I would say that only government is not responsible for this the conservation of the water. So at the same time, the people of different locality, so they should also conscious to how that water will be conserved. And so first I can audible होने के next that the National Water Awareness Campaign that the Rashtriya Jal Chetana, whether it is audible? Sir, now it is okay. Hello, dear learner, are you?
Yes,
Are
sir.
you
Yes, okay now.
okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So National Water
Okay now.
Awareness Campaign, the two important water conservation that movement, which is the remarkable for this unit and for our water conservation. And these two, that is one is the National Water Awareness Campaign, that Rashtriya Jal Chetana Yatra. Another is the that Palchimeda campaign. And these two, and in which that local people, they became conscious and fight against the particularly government, and they started and they tried to that particularly stop the project, that governmental project. That means in the name of development and several that areas, that the government is taking steps for development programs, and that development programs which going against the local people and their that water resources. So the restoration of that water resources, ये जो दीटा घटना जो ହେଇଛି ସେଥିରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମର ଇଏ ହେଲା କି ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରୀୟ ଜଳ ଚେତନା जो ଇଏଟା ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା जो କ୍ୟାମ୍ପେନଟା, तो particularly ସେ ଏରିଆରେ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ जो ପ୍ରୋଜେକ୍ଟ କରାଯାଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ପ୍ରୋଜେକ୍ଟ ଖନନ ଦ୍ୱାରା କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ପଲ୍ୟୁଟେଡ୍ ପାଣି ସେମାନେ ପାଇଲେ ଏବଂ ପଲ୍ୟୁଟେଡ୍ ପାଣିରୁ जो ରୋଗ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେଲା ଏକୁ awareness ହେଲା। ତେଣୁ ତାପରେ ସେମାନେ that water conservation movement ଆରମ୍ଭ କଲେ against the government. So that it brings the 4 millions of local traditions and also that particular initiative to revive rivers recharge equator and rejuvenate nature. The objective of this awareness campaign, कौन सी जो awareness campaign objective कौन थी ना, to spread the message that of conservation of water and other natural resources, to revive the local traditional practices of water conservation throughout India, and to generate awareness about the proposal of that interconnecting rivers and its impact, need, and the feasibility, and to promote role of women on water conservation, to establish the society's right to water. So ଏହା ହେଉଛି ଥିଲା ଏଇ ଯୋଉ water that conservation movement ର ମୂଳ ଲକ୍ଷ୍ୟ। So I want to focus the that particularly Pachimedha campaign. So the movement is one of the best example of resistance against the neo-colonial attempts of exploitation by multinational corporation. The Pachimedha is that situated in the particularly Parmuti that panchayat in the Palghat district of Kerala, when the Coca-Cola plant that project established, the water turned that brackish and also milky white and was no longer fit for the household purpose. What the people realized it. So the people that started struggle against that plant in 2002, the Adivasis that the Adivasis that Sangrakshan that Sangha, one of the leading that organization of this water conservation movement, led that symbolic protest against that particularly to resist the plant. The government finally So when the whole people of that area, they became conscious and aware that this particular plant for which we are getting the polluted water. So and they started their agitation against the government, and they ventilate this the particular idea all over the country. So the government banned the manufacture and sale of Coca-Cola in Kerala in the interest of the public health in 2006. So, କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ଯେ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କର ଇନିସିଏଟିଭ ପାଇଁ ଏଠି ମାନେ ପ୍ୟୁର ୱାଟର ମିଳିଲା। ସୋ ନେକ୍ସଟ ଦ ସୋସିଆଲ ଆୱାରନେସ ଫର ୱାଟର କନଜରଭେସନ କଣ କରାଯାଇପାରେ। ଦ ଟୁ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଆର ଦ ୱିଟନେସ। ଏଇ ଦୁଇଟି ଯୋଉ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଆମକୁ ଯୋଉ ମୁକ ସାକ୍ଷୀ ଏବଂ ଆମକୁ କନସିୟସ୍ କରୁଛି ଏ ବାବଦରେ କଣ ନା ଟୁ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଆର ଦ ୱିଟନେସ ଅଫ ଦ ଗ୍ରୋଇଂ awareness among the common people about the emerging dangers threatening their livelihood and survival. The years of that state activism on the economy and the society in general failed to ensure a nature-friendly development of all that sections in the society. The big projects on the name of development, the big project in the name of development ultimately contributed towards over-exploitation of the nature, environmental degradation, and most importantly, the evacuation of the traditional communities from their original habitat. The growing awareness among the local communities about their rights over the soil and water has deconstructed the dominant paradigm of development. ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଏଥିରୁ ଜାଣିବା ଯେ ସୋସିଆଲ ଆୱାରନେସ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ଯେ ସରକାର ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରୋଜେକ୍ଟ ନାଁରେ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ଏକ୍ସପ୍ଲୋଇଟ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସାଧାରଣ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ। ତେଣୁ ଏଥିପାଇଁ ଯୋଉ soul the people in general they should be conscious। କାରଣ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ମାରେ ନିଜ ଆମେ ଭିଟାମାଟିକ ଛାଡିବାକୁ ପଡୁଛି, କିଛି ମାନେ ଇଭାକୁଏଟ କରାଯାଉଛି। ତେଣୁ ଏବଂ ଆମର ଏନଭାୟରମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଦ କଣ୍ଡିସନକୁ ଆଗ୍ରାରିଆନ ଏରିଆ ଏଗୁଡାକ ସବୁ ହଉଛି ଲସ୍ ହଉଛି। ତେଣୁ ଏ ସବୁକୁ ଲୋକମାନେ ଯେତେବେଳେ କନସିୟସ୍ ହେବେ ତେଣୁ ୱାଟର କନଜରଭେସନଟା ରହିପାରିବ। ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା ଯେ in this particular unit that we can conclude that both the movement that emphasize the importance of groundwater source for the sustainability of humanity and life forms in the earth, posing the development in people friendly and nature friendly. That again I am telling the same thing that this that two movement what is emphasized the importance of groundwater resources for the sustainability of humanity। मानव सभ्यता किमिति भाबरे दृष्टि रहि परिबो एवं लाइफ फॉर्म्स इन द अर्थ posing the development in the people and people friendly and nature friendly perspective। The movement are anti the imperialist campaign and strongly support the democratic means to change the society in Gandhian way। Now each people use social media and at last I want to express now each people use social media without age limit and all the learner you might have known। So it is better to use social media to spread awareness about the saving water and another way এটা ହେଇପାରିବା ଯେ କିଭଳି କି ଯିଏ ଯୋଉଟା ପ୍ରକ୍ରିୟା ଜାଣିଛି ସେ ମଧ୍ୟ ହଉଛି ସୋସିଆଲ ମିଡିଆରେ ଛାଡ଼ିପାରିବେ। Another way is conduct that water saving awareness class at schools, colleges, universities। Aware the children about the importance of water and effect of scarcity of water in the future for sustainability। ये कथा सान पिला मानकु जणेबा दरकार जे यार ए जो स्कार्सिटी जलर न्यूनटिया किभली भाव रे हमर भविष्यत रे जो तिष्ठि रहिया पे कष्टकर हो सो ऑल द पीपल शुड एवर that water is the base of our life. No water, no life. And we all are depend on this. Not in daily, but in hourly basis. So the nature is our, and we should feel the nature is our mother, and unlike some resources, that unlike some resources, water is limited. And it is our responsibility to save water for our own survival. It is the responsibility of all the citizens of India. And so this was the water conservation. Then we see that civil rights movement in the United States. It is an important issue how the white and the black, the racial discrimination and the civil rights was initiated and what was happened. And dear learner, you should know that we are discussing about the non-violent movement after Gandhi, but up to 13, up to that 12 unit. So we are discussing that in all sphere of action and in all cases, the non-violent revolution, non-violent movement to have been succeeded in different situations. But it is that something that unsuccessful in the particularly USA, particularly civil rights movement. That doesn't mean that non-violent movement, the Gandhian that perspective, that has no relevance, but it has given some that fruits, but not fully. So and how and what is something extraordinary as that we'll discuss now. The civil rights movement in the United States. The civil rights movement in the United States was a decades-long struggle by African American and their like-minded allies to end institutionalized racial discrimination and racial segregation in the United States. I am telling the main point why civil rights movement was caused. The civil rights movement in the United States was a decades-long struggle by African American and their like-minded allies to end institutional racial discrimination and racial segregation in the United States. The movement had its origin in the Reconstruction era during the late 19th century. Although the movement achieved its largest legislative gains in the mid-1960s after years of that direct action and grassroots protests. The social movement measured non-violent resistance and the civil disobedience campaign eventually secured new protections in federal law for the human rights of all Americans. परवर्ती पर्याୟରେ सो हेइछि किंतु in this civil rights movement and the Gandhi and how the Gandhian philosophy and Gandhian approach is related in the civil rights movement in America. So Gandhi have started the freedom movement to get liberate Mother India. But in what way his approach and philosophy is related to that civil rights movement in United States and how far it has achieved its goal? Let us see. So Here, Mahatma Gandhi influence on civil rights movement around the world is beyond anyone's doubt. Non-violent resistance through non-cooperation and civil disobedience movement are powerful tools of the deprived of the privileged section of the society. ଏହା ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ସମାଜରେ ଯୋଉ ବଞ୍ଚିତ ହେଉଥିବା ଶ୍ରେଣୀ ମାନଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ଇଏ ହେଉଛି ଏକମାତ୍ର ଅସ୍ତ୍ର ଯାହାକୁ ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଅଥରିଟି ବିରୁଦ୍ଧରେ ସରକାରଙ୍କ ବିରୁଦ୍ଧରେ ବା ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଅଧିକାରକୁ ସାବ୍ୟସ୍ତ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଇଏ ହେଉଛି ଦ ରାଇଟ୍ ମିନ୍ସ so the Martin Luther King Jr., the leader who led the non-violent civil rights movement in the United States to empower the African Americans was highly inspired by the Gandhi. ତେଣୁ ଗାନ୍ଧୀଙ୍କର ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଆପ୍ରୋଚରେ ଗାନ୍ଧୀଙ୍କର ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରାରେ ଅନୁପ୍ରାଣିତ ଯୋଉ ହେଇ ଏଇ ହଉଛି କଣ ଆଫ୍ରିକାନ ଏବଂ ଆମେରିକାନ ଉପରେ ଯୋଉ ରେସିଆଲ ଡିସ୍କ୍ରିମିନେସନ ଚାଲିଥିଲା ଏବଂ ସେ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ଯୋଉ ଫ୍ରୁଟ ଆସିଛି ଏଥିରେ ସେ କଥା ଆମେ ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା ଆଫ୍ରିକାନ ବ୍ଲାକ୍ American also white. So the meaning and significance of civil rights. The civil rights denote the rights of individuals to equal protection under the laws of the land and equal access to public amenities and services in the society. ଯାହା ସବୁ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ସୁବିଧା ସୁଯୋଗ ଅଛି ବା ସେବା ଅଛି ସେଗୁଡାକ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ସେ ଯାହା ଆଇନ ଦ୍ୱାରା ସ୍ଥିର ହେଇଛି ତାକୁ ପାଇବା ପାଇଁ ଆମେ କୁହନ୍ତି କଣ ନା ଏଇଟା ହଉଛି ଆମର ସିଭିଲ ରାଇଟ ତ ସିଭିଲ ରାଇଟ ଡିଫର ଫ୍ରମ ଦ ସିଭିଲ ଲିବର୍ଟିଜ you should know that civil rights is differ from civil liberties. How? The civil liberties involve the freedom of speech. The civil liberty is particularly involved means the freedom of speech and expression and other freedom of the citizens that are protected from possible violation by the government. But the civil rights on the other hand refers to the individual members or groups, whether racial group, religious group, and the other who need to be treated equally by the government and even by the private parties to a certain context. To express in simple the term that civil rights deal with the personal freedom that to express in simple terms that the civil liberties deal with the personal freedoms and civil rights are related to issue of equality. Civil right ସବୁବେଳେ କଣ ନା ଏହା ଗୋଟେ ଇସ୍ୟୁ କଣ ପାଇଁ ନା ଇକ୍ୱାଲିଟି ପାଇଁ ଇସ୍ୟୁ ଅଫ ଇକ୍ୱାଲିଟି କିନ୍ତୁ ଲିବର୍ଟିଜ ସିଭିଲ ଲିବର୍ଟିଜ ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ରିଲେଟେଡ ଟୁ ଦ ପର୍ସନାଲ ଫ୍ରିଡମ ବ୍ୟକ୍ତିଗତ ସ୍ୱାଧୀନତା ଏଟା କମ୍ୟୁନିଟି ବା ଗ୍ରୁପ କୁ ସହିତ ଇନଭଲଭ ହେଲା ବେଳକୁ ଏଟା ହଉଛି ପର୍ସନାଲ ତେଣୁ ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଗୋଟେ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀର ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ ପାଇଁ जो सिविल राइट मूवमेंट यूएसए रे किभଳି भाବରେ हितला एवं सिविल राइट मूवमेंट इन यूएसए जस्ट आई विल गिव इन ए नटसेल द अमेरिकन सिविल राइट्स मूवमेंट started in the mid 1950s. A major catalyst in the push for civil rights was in December 1955 when National Association for the Advancement of Colored People ଯାହାକୁ ସର୍ଟ ଫର୍ମରେ କୁହାଯାଏ NAAC ନାଟ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ so National Association for the Advancement of that Colored People activist that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a public bus to a white man. Again I am telling the thing that why it occurred the civil rights movement. the Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a public bus to a white man. Martin Luther King Jr. was an important leader of civil rights movement. So Rosa Parks means the American civil rights activist. The American civil rights activist. ସେମାନେ ସେତେବେଳେ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ କରୁଥିଲେ ଇଏ ହଉଛି ସିଟ୍ ଦେଲେନି ଗୋଟେ ବସରେ. So who refused to give up her seat on a public bus to a white customer. ସେଇ ବସରେ ଯାଉଥିବା ଗୋଟେ ହ୍ୱାଇଟ୍ କଷ୍ଟମରକୁ ସେ ତାଙ୍କ ସିଟ୍ ଦେଲେନି. ତେଣୁ ଯିଏକି ଜଣେ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଲୋକ ମାନେ ସାଧାରଣ ଲୋକ ସେ ନୁହେଁ. So some extraordinary man. So କିଏ ନା ଜନ୍ ଲୁଇସ୍, the American civil rights leader and a politician, John Lewis. So helped plan the march on Washington. So ମାନେ ୱାସିଂଟନ ଚାଲ ଏଭଳି ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ଆରମ୍ଭ କଲେ ଯୋଉ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ. The American civil rights movement broke that entrenched system of racial segregation on the South and achieved crucial equal rights legislation. ତେଣୁ now ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଘଟଣା ଯୋଉ ହେଲା ଯେ ଧଳା ଗୋରା ଭେଦଭାବ ଯୋଉଟା କି ଆମର ସାଉଥ ଆଫ୍ରିକାରେ ବି ମଧ୍ୟ ହେଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ଗାନ୍ଧୀ ସେଠି ସକ୍ସେସଫୁଲ ହେଇଥିଲେ ନନ୍-ଭାୟୋଲେଣ୍ଟ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ପାଇଁ. ତେଣୁ ଏଠି ଯେ କଣ ହେଲା ଯୋଉ ସାଧାରଣ ବସରେ ଯିବା ବେଳେ ଯୋଉ ଘଟଣା ଘଟିଲା ଗୋଟେ ହ୍ୱାଇଟ୍ ମ୍ୟାନକୁ ଦିଆଗଲାନି. ତେଣୁ ତା ପୂର୍ବରୁ ବୋଧେ ରେସିଆଲ ଡିସ୍କ୍ରିମିନେସନ ପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇଥିଲା ଯେ ଆଫ୍ରିକାନ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଆମେରିକାନଙ୍କ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ଗୋଟେ ଡିସିଡେଣ୍ଟ ଆଟିଚ୍ୟୁଡ ଗୋଟେ ଡେଭଲପ ହେଇଥିଲା. ନହେଲେ ଏ ପ୍ରକାର କେବେ ହେଇନଥାନ୍ତା. ତେଣୁ ଦେଖିବା the black civil rights movement ସେ ସମୟରେ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ହେଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ the discrimination of the disadvantaged groups African American ଭିତରେ ଯୋଉ ଲାଗିଲା ଯୋଉ tussle. The first written constitution of the world did not recognize slaves as human beings, reserving the equality with the white population and were not given full citizenship. କହିଲେ ସେ ହ୍ୱାଇଟ୍ ଲୋକଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ଇଏ ସମାନ ନୁହନ୍ତି, ତାଙ୍କୁ ଆମେ ନାଗରିକତା ଦବୁନି. So it was that particularly issues. The slave trade was allowed until 1808. Slavery as a social institution was dismantled only after that 4 years civil war in the US that threatened the unity and the territorial integrity of the nation. The civil war was followed by a period of reconstruction when that reconstruction ended in 1877 and the federal troops were withdrawn from the slave states. The white supremacy in that socio-political life returned. So various incidents regarding the civil rights movement and which is the main that focus point is the racial discrimination. That racial discrimination is the main issue. So black civil rights movement also another civil rights movement. What happened in this case? Now, one of the most well-known that incident in the movement was a march organized by that king in the city of that Birmingham in Alabama in 1963. As a king and his supporters began their peaceful marches and demonstrations, that Birmingham police led by that Sheriff Eugene Bull Corner attacked the demonstrators, including a king with dogs, cattle, prods, and powerhouses. The entire country watched with this that ghastly and brutal scene on television. So this incident that blustered further the courage and that valor of the African American community to continue the fight, and also made a large number of white Americans that synthetic to the cause of the African Americans. So, in the same year, as a result, on the that 2nd August, that King and other leaders organized a massive march on the Washington for jobs and freedom and the rights of the African American that attracted about the quarter of a million marches. So here you see that how a group they are demanding their rights to sustain, to survive in a state. So Reverend King made his famous speech where he said, I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. ତେଣୁ ତାପରେ କଣ ହେଇଛି ଦେଖିବା. This march brought moral trim and political victory. এই ଯୋଉ ସ୍ଲୋଗାନ, এই ଯୋଉ କଥା କଣ କଲା ନା it that brought the moral triumph and a political victory. In 1964, despite the hurdles and barriers erected by the conservatives and the racist, the United States Congress enacted the Civil Rights Act, providing African Americans and other minority communities equal access to public facility. And एक कथा कांग्रेस कला एथि पे जे किमते वोट अधिक पाइले and prohibited discrimination in jobs on racial grounds. However, enactment of legislation did not automatically bring to an end discrimination against the minority, nor put an end to the feeling of racial superiority among the people. The southern states began to devise new means to put the damper on the Federal Civil Rights Act. So, this was the fact that how the black civil rights movement was happened, and what was the fate, and what are the consequences of the civil rights movement. Let us see. The civil rights movement, the the civil rights movement did not give black Americans prosperity or job. ये जो हला जो non-violent movement बा जाहु जो civil rights movement started, and also black civil rights movement. ये जो civil rights movement, what happened? What was the outcomes? The civil rights movement did not give black Americans that prosperity or job. कौनसी सुविधा उठी देनी. This led to a wave of riots that destroy many black communities across American cities. Some of these communities never recover. To this day, poverty and violence and discrimination against the black people continues. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ସେଟା ଚାଲିଛି ସେଠି. ଏଇ ରିସେଣ୍ଟଲି କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ହ୍ୱାଇଟ୍ ପୋଲିସ ଜଣେ କେମିତି ବ୍ଲାକ୍ ଲୋକକୁ ଆଣ୍ଠୁ ତଳେ ମାଡ଼ିକି କିଭଳି ମାରିଥିଲା, ମାନେ ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରାୟ ଜାଣିଥିବେ ସମସ୍ତେ, ଏବଂ ଭିଡିଓ ଭାଇରାଲ ହେଇଥିଲା. And what we feel that racial discrimination and the feelings still continues. Though civil rights movement in the past was happened to solve this. Civil rights did not give any satisfactory result. Black Americans, particularly in the black ghattas in the town remained poor and hungry, that they still subject to discrimination. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ସୁଦ୍ଧା ସେଇ ବର୍ଣ୍ଣ ବୈଷମ୍ୟ ଭିତରେ ସେ ଅଛନ୍ତି ଏବଂ ପୋଲିସ ହାରାସମେଣ୍ଟ ମଧ୍ୟ କରୁଛି ପୋଲିସ ହାରାସମେଣ୍ଟ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଲୋ that standard of living ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଅଛି the basic rights that had been promised to many black Americans failed to be seen ବହୁତ ପ୍ରତିଶ୍ରୁତି ପାଇଥିଲେ କିନ୍ତୁ କିଛି ସେଗୁଡାକ ଦେଖା ନାହିଁ as a result groups such as the Black Panthers sought to move the civil rights movement to another level by encouraging that black communities to become self-sufficient by setting up business, housing, education schemes as well as the policing their own communities. In 1968, that Martin Luther King George was assassinated. This led to a wave of riots across the America. Martin Luther जी की माने civil rights movement रो जो एसिलेटर तांको हत्या करागला तापर पुणी भिन्न रूप नेला ଏବଂ अमेरिका रे एपर्यंत मध्य कोनसी सिचुएशन हेले भी जे that racial discrimination agitation. So what is the position of Democrat that party, democracy and a republican? The democracy and the civil rights. The civil rights movement campaign efforts that civil rights movement comprised that the efforts of that grassroots activity and the national leaders to obtain for African American the basic rights guaranteed to that American citizen in the Constitution, including the right to due process and equal protection of the laws and the right to vote. So democracy and the civil rights, the Democratic Party was in favor of the citizens, American citizens. But the Republican and the civil rights, you see, the while a landmark act that received a majority of support from both parties, a greater percentage of Republican voted in favor of the bill throughout the 1950s to 1960s. 1950 ରୁ 1960 ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ Republicans were generally more united than the Democratic in support of the civil rights legislation, as many the Southern Democracies voted in opposition. Kintu, in spite of all these, there is no doubt that civil rights movement have left American politics and society deeply divided. There is no doubt that civil rights movement have left American politics and society deeply divided. The domestic policy plans of the two major parties are determined to a large extent by their respective stance on the civil rights issues. The dal taka nijoswa dhangare dele ebong the churches, the centerpiece of American middle class life, that stand turned by issues of race, ethnicity and sexual orientation in ours. Though race yet are not common any longer, but that racially inspired hate crimes, যদিও এই যে race yet এটা কিছু পরিমাণে কমেছে, but not common only longer, but racially inspired hate crimes. এটা পড়া লোক এই প্রকার গোটে যে ঘৃণা মনোভাব এই প্রকার ক্রাইমস have shown a sharp increase in America. Yet, till now, if similar movement have appeared elsewhere, যদি এই যে ଆମେ environment movement ଆଉ କୋଉଠି ଯଦି ଆମେ ଅନ୍ୟ କୋଉ ଦେଶରେ ବା ଏଠି ମାନେ ଲାଗୁ ହେଇଥାନ୍ତା ବା ଗୋଟେ ଇଫୋର୍ଟ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରାଯାଇଥାନ୍ତା, a similar movement appeared elsewhere, it can serve as a measure of the degree of modernization that has taken place in the society in India. ଯେମିତି ଆମର ଏଇ non-violent movement ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ modern India ଆମେ ପାଇପାରିଛୁ. That remains a positive contribution of the American civil rights movement in understanding the degree of development in non-American societies. किंतु जोटा अमेरिकन सोसाइटी रे सक्सेसफुल होला नाही. अवश्य नॉन वायलेंट मूवमेंट प्रोसेस ये गुडा सब वर्तमान अछि स्ट्राइक घेराव ये सब अछि किंतु सेते बेले से जो सिविल राइट मूवमेंट रे तो रेशियल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन जोटा हला सेटा माने एंड हला नाही. सो एनीवे now one of the important and also the interesting movement we have to see that green peace movement, and I will tell in the very that nutshell that how the green peace movement in Europe is an important issue and which give an idea to the learners to save the world from the nuclear holocaust. So let us see what is Greenpeace movement in Europe. So Greenpeace is an independent global campaign organization that acts to change attitude, behavior, to protect and conserve the environment and to promote peace by catalyzing an energy revolution to address the number one threat facing our planet, climate change. किभली भाबरे न्यूक्लियर जो that energy यूज करा जाई हमरो पृथ्वी को विपदग्रस्त आने को निया जाउछि एवं या द्वारा कोन होउछि जलवायु परिवर्तन होउछि. जलवायु परिवर्तन हला लोक डिजीज आसुछि एवं it is the difficult task on the part of the people to survive in the planet Earth. So the reason is that that is the nuclear use of nuclear power by different countries. So it is the that international environmental organization. The Greenpeace movement is not a local that organization. It is the international organization. In the international environmental organization that founded in 1969 during the international environmental during a non-violent direct action campaign against the United States nuclear weapons testing in Alaska. That is in America. The central philosophy of that original Greenpeace organization was non-violent direct action on behalf of the planet Earth. Particularly the non-violent direct action on behalf of the planet Earth. पृथ्वी को किभली भाबरे एई भली न्यूक्लियर हॉलोकॉस्ट रु तमाने आणविक जो ध्वंसरु किभली भाबरे रक्षा करा जाय परिबो एहा गुटे चेष्टा थिला ए जो ग्रीन पीस दैट एक्टिविस्ट मानकर एवं ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. सो ग्रीन पीस हैज that learned that a unique role in the international environmental movement due to its that willingness to take direct action and its refusal to compromise on the issue of critical environmental that input. It works on issues of global importance. निर्दिष्ट जो स्टेट में यह जागतिक गुरुत्व याद रखिला ये जो घटना थी. इट वाज नॉट ए local membership group like other states campaign. So although it is although it is its energy and genetic engineering campaign increasingly work at the grassroots level to enhance environmental activism in the communities worldwide. But the Greenpeace organization does not participate in the party politics. In the we see in a different movement that the movement also supported by any party and the opposed by another party. So the Greenpeace movement is not related to party politics. But it does lobby with the government and holds them accountable for failing to adopt the stringent laws to safeguard human health and the environment. Party politics करेंगे, किंतु गवर्नमेंट ऊपर ये होची निश्चित माने तो अकाउंटेबल कराए जे गवर्नमेंट डिसीजन माध्यम रे केवल भाव रे हमें डिजार्ममेंट को एक्सेप्ट करिया एवं न्यूक्लियर आर्मामेंट जो टेस्टिंग को केମିତି बंद करिया. So reason for starting Greenpeace movement. What was the reason? The Greenpeace movement started in 1971 with a small group of volunteers organizing a music concert to raise funds to sail a boat from the Vancouver to Amichitka to protest against the US militarism and the testing of nuclear weapons. The tests went ahead, but the protest gave birth to a new idea that is called Greenpeace. अमेरिका जितेबाला अमेरिकार सामरिक बाहिनी जितेबाला आणविक जो अस्त्र को परीक्षण कला कोठी जो अल्कासा ठारे तेणु गोटे स्मॉल ग्रुप प्रथमे जो भलकर भरटा होची कनाडा तेणु सेटू दैट अमेरिका पर्यंत जीवा पई से माने कलेक्शन कले जे किछि फंड that why the reason is that to stop to protect the protest the US militarism and the testing of nuclear weapons. So far as the history is concerned, I would say in a small idea that the history of that Greenpeace was in 1971. A small team of activity set sail from that Vancouver of Canada in an old fishing boat. Their mission to protest underground nuclear testing by the United States military at Amichitka, a teeny volcanic island of western Alaska. Alaska thare जो अमेरिका जो चाहिला माने टेस्ट करिया पई ताकू प्रतिहत करिया पई विरोध करिया पई सो गोटे बोट पई प्रथम सिद्धांत करागला तो गोटे तनो द ग्रीन पीस मूवमेंट बेसिकली टू मेक ए ऑर्डर सोसाइटी व्हिच इज फ्री फ्रॉम न्यूक्लियर data testing, I think. So what was the members? Who are the member states of the Greenpeace movement? The Greenpeace is comprised of 27 independent states, both national and regional organizations in over 55 countries across the Europe. The Americans, the Americans, Africans, Asia, and the specific as well as a coordinated body that Greenpeace, that international, we work directly with the communities on the front line as the protest environments they call home. So we see that what is the that mission. What was the mission of this Greenpeace movement? The Greenpeace is an independent global company organization that acts to change that attitude and behavior to protect and conserve the environment. Hmm. And they promote that peace. So this is the committee. Now, how the peace can be that can be promoted? Now, that crystallizing an energy revolution to address the number one threat facing our planet, climate change, defending our ocean by challenging wasteful and destructive fishing and creating a global network marine services. Number three, what was the mission of the Greenpeace movement? I am telling that working for disarmament and peace by reducing dependence on the finite resources. Hello?
हेलो
What happened?
सर आवाज आ रही है आपको मेरी?
What happened?
सर ये ग्रीन पीस वाला आप दोबारा समझा सकते हैं क्या?
Greenpeace?
Yes,
Again?
Yes, sir.
Greenpeace? Tell me again.
Can you repeat Greenpeace again, sir? Greenpeace section, the history.
Oh, Greenpeace section. Okay. Okay. So Greenpeace, you see, Greenpeace is an independent global campaign organization that acts to change that attitude and behavior to protect and conserve the environment. Followed? To protect the environment and to conserve the environment and promote the peace by that catalyzing and that energy revolution to address the number that threat facing our planet. That means that due to the nuclear armaments and it is practicing by the different states through military thing, so it is creating our planet that poisonous, and so that the climate change are taking place. Due to climate change, जो unnatural rainfall and disease and different flus, so that are creating. So Greenpeace movement, that Greenpeace organization, जो started its efforts how to check this that nuclear testing used by the USA and also other countries. So that is why I am pointing out what was the mission, what was the actual that objective of this Greenpeace movement. So it is not a local campaign. It is a global campaign. How the earth will that survive and earth will be free from the pollution of the environment. So to promote this, what sort of step can be taken? Now, the number one, that catalyzing an energy evolution to address the number one threat facing our planet, that is climate change. Defending our oceans by challenging wasteful and destructive fishing and creating a global network of marine reserves. So we are throwing a different type of materials to the oceans, so that it is a wasteful and there's so many that pieces. So the seawater are poison, and particularly it creating a global network of marine reserves. Number three mission, protecting the world's that remaining ancient forests which are dependent on by many animals, plants and people. That means the biodiversity should be maintained. The protecting the world's remaining the ancient forest, which was the old forest, that should be preserved as the for the particularly environmental purpose. And the old ancient forest, in which the many wild animals, plants, and are dependable. And number 4 mission is the working for disarmament and peace by reducing dependence on the finite resources and the calling for the elimination of all nuclear weapons. So all the states should take step not to practice, not to testing the nuclear weapons, because the radiation of nuclear that is affecting different type of creating different type of disease, so which threaten the human existence. And another thing is that creating a toxic free future, तामाने जहाँ को हमें कहते विषमुक्त, toxic free, poison free future with safer alternative to hazardous chemicals in today's product and manufacturing. जो product manufacturing में जो chemical reaction, it is also creating our that earth trouble. And number 6 mission is that campaigning for sustainable agriculture by encouraging socially and ecologically responsible farming practices. Campaigning for that Greenpeace organizations. The Greenpeace organizers, organizer, they had also mission that campaigning for sustainable agriculture. That means in which that agricultural resources should sustain the human life by encouraging socially and ecologically responsible farming practices, not using that random fertilizers, chemicals, and also pesticides. Rather, the organic method of cultivation should be adapted by the farmers so that the earth will maintain its natural position. So the early days and steady growth that I have already told, the member states in this Greenpeace movement was the 27 independent national regional organization, but overall the 55 countries across the Europe, that is America, Africa, Asia, and other countries. So in this Greenpeace movement, the campaign for anti-nuclear campaign was there. The particularly formation of a formal global organization, campaign seed, and so finally the main thrust area is the Greenpeace remains one of the premier environmental organization, and combining the traditional political activities that coalitions with the non-violent direct action. It is largely because of its innovative uses. Hello,
Hanji, sir, please charge your computer because it is gonna switch off the notification, so your battery is running low.
Okay.
So the class will be get disconnected.
Sibu, charge the. Hello, just the battery is low, na? Okay. Just time. So listen, the Greenpeace, it is largely because of its innovative uses of non-violent action. It has had a large influence on both the agenda of the global environmental movement and various the agenda of the global environmental movement and various national and international policies. It activist that spearheaded 6 major campaigns. Just I'm giving the battery. Okay. Now it is okay, dear Lana. Hello. Hello.
Hello, it's,
No, no.
it is okay.
It is
Yeah, it's okay, sir.
okay. Again, see. Okay.
So yes, sir, it's okay. It's charging.
And I have given in a nutshell the idea of Greenpeace movement, and it's that starting, its history, its members, and finally I'm telling that it's the activity that spearheaded 6 major campaign. Stop global warming. ତେଣୁ କେମିତି ପୃଥିବୀ ଉତ୍ତପ୍ତ ହେବ ନାହିଁ ତେଣୁ what is the main motto of this campaign, that is stop global warming. Next, the save ancient forest. Number 3, eliminate toxic chemical production and pollution. Halt the genetic that engineering of food. जोड़ाक सब हमरो माने नेचर प्रोडक्ट नेचर जो फूड प्रोडक्ट सब दोची सेवडा केमते प्रिजर्व रहइबो एंड अचीव ए न्यूक्लियर फ्री फ्यूचर फॉर द जनरेशन in the planet Earth, and protect the world's ocean. That world oceans, how it will not be that polluted. It is the very motto of this that Greenpeace movement. So Greenpeace movement in this way preserve the environment as well as the human sustain by that promoting the movement and to making understand to all the countries not to use the nuclear that test and also for the military purposes. So anyway, the next is the anti-apartheid movement in the South Africa. That is this is the racial discrimination, and we see the South Africa has the distinction of being the only country in the world which adopted the policy of officially discriminating its citizens on the basis of race, color of the skin. This system of official racial discrimination in South Africa was in existence for almost 90 years, whereas the apartheid system continued for 4.5 decades. 4.5 decades. That due to the support extended in South Africa by major Western states, which had huge investment. Those who opposed apartheid, you give the now just I will give your particularly force, that is the anti-apartheid movement. From the study material you see that though the United Nations was seized of the question of racial discrimination and apartheid on South Africa since 1946, its pressure had only the weight of that moral and international public opinion. The strong anti-apartheid movement launched inside the inside and the outside the South Africa played a significant role in dismantling the apartheid system in 1994, in which that that Nelson Mandela has taken the leadership. And in this the sphere, we have to see that to some extent what is the apartheid system. That apartheid is that Africans word, which literally meaning the racial segregation as practiced by National Party, which came to power in South Africa in 1948. The UN adopted the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid in 1973, in which apartheid has been declared as a crime against humanity and that inhuman acts resulting from the policies of apartheid are crimes violating the principles of international law, in particular the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. The convention also provides a definition of apartheid in its Article 2 as applying to the following inhuman acts committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group of person. That means a particular racial group, they want certain identification or autonomy. That separate culture, separate language, and also maintenance, all these things. So, the example may be given like Budo Assam, the Gurkhara of that West Bengal, they are also apartheid groups. So it was practiced in that South Africa, and the origin of Gandhi contribution. The seeds of in South Africa were sown by Gandhi. He established the first anti-colonial and anti-racial discrimination movement there, and founded the Natal Indian Congress on 22nd August 1894. When Gandhi learned that the South African government is likely to pass a law to that disfranchise Indians. Disfranchise Indians. He urged the Indians to protest. It was happened when Gandhi was at South Africa. So on his suggestion, a petition was sent to the South African legislature on 28 June 1894. Wide publicity of the petition was made. Despite the Indian opposition, the bill was passed by the South African government. That means, what was the problem? Now, that Indian will not be allowed franchise. This is the main of the legislature. So Gandhi sent another petition to Lord Ripon, secretly, of colonies in London, because it was under the British imperialism. So 10,000 Indians signed this petition. Lord Ripon disallowed that disfranchising bill. Thus, the petitioner Gandhi succeeded. So here, the case of the non-violent struggle could succeed. So Gandhi's Satyagraha experiment began in 1906. He opposed the 1906 legislation repairing the registration of Asians. Opposing this law, thousands of Asians boycotted registration. Gandhi and his Satyagraha were arrested and the jail were full. So following an agreement between General Smuts and the Prime Minister and Gandhi, an agreement was evolved whereby the Indians would voluntarily register and the registration act would be replaced thereafter. So the thing is that how the Gandhi's contribution in this regard, that how the Satyagraha and the non-violent movement could succeeded in South Africa for this anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And this is also the Gandhian movement, that Gandhian approach of non-violent after Gandhi. The struggle against apartheid role in that ANC and African leaders and other areas, the role of the United Nations and its impact, that is the civil rights movement, and so Africans and Americans tussle. So this particular that movement, the main thrust area, and also what is the important to study, just I want to know that in South Africa, the racial discrimination was an official policy of the white minority government. And there is a minority government, and it is composed by the white people for last 80 years. So Gandhi primarily laid the foundation in the first decade of the 20th century, and which got that matured, enlarged with the mass following, with the involvement of the anti-apartheid and its affiliated bodies and other political organizations. Since the 1950s, it is at the forefront to run that particular movement, anti-apartheid movement, and initially African leaders and organizations used the Gandhian method of non-violence to resolve apartheid. प्रथमे ସେମାନେ ଗାନ୍ଧିଆନ ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲଟାକୁ କଲେ ଏବଂ ପରେ ପରେ subsequently they were compelled by South African authorities to use violent measures instead of non-violent measures to achieve their goal of the dismantling apartheid. So during their long struggle, that means the anti-apartheid movement, which was in favor of which is supported by Gandhi, so they followed the non-violent means. But the government who wanted to suppress it, so they followed that violent that method. So during their long struggle against the apartheid, thousands of people and many of their leaders lost their lives. Then anti-apartheid movement got international support from the United Nations and European Union and the Commonwealth countries. The United Nations even debated and voted to expel that South Africa from the United Nations in 1970s. The UN not only adopted the three important human rights instruments to deal with the problem of racial discrimination, but also, that means this idea was discussed at IGNOU and the racial discrimination, but also imposed arms embargo and sanctions against the South Africa. South Africa government a प्रकार करुछि बोली यूएनओ को सेठी मध्य फोर्स पठेले. The anti-apartheid movement was the first successful transnational social movement in the modern world. Although national liberalism and Marxism might both be considered a successful transnational social movement, neither of these had the global support that the anti-apartheid movement that guaranteed. Then anti-apartheid movement, which was continued at South Africa under the leadership of Gandhi. So Gandhi, by applying the non-violent and also the Satyagraha, so he could got the final result. And the Gandhian success, it was spread that worldwide. that how the Gandhian approach and Gandhian that non-violent movement that solved that major crisis in the South Africa. So that is why that topic is important. And next is the solidarity movement in Poland. It is the another that topic. We will just touch over that time is already finished. So it is in Poland. So Poland is an ancient nation that was conceived near the middle of the 10th century. Its golden age occurred in the 16th century. During the following century, the strengthening of the genetary and internal disorder weakened the nation. In a series of agreement between 1972 and 1795, 1772 and 1795, Prussia, and the Austria, and partitioned the Poland amongst themselves. So Poland regained its independence in 1918, only to be overrun by Germany and the Soviet Union in the World War II. So it became a Soviet satellite state following the war, but its government was comparatively tolerant and progressive. And the labor turmoil in 1980 led the formation of independent trade union, that solidarity. That over time became a political force, and by 1990 swept parliamentary election and the presidency. So solidarity was the first non-communist trade union. It is an organization, communist country, the union in a communist country. Solidarity was the first non-communist trade union in a communist country in the 1980. It constituted a broad anti-communist social movement. So it constituted a broad communist social movement. The government attempted to destroy the union, that solidarity union, during the period of martial law in the early 1980s. And several years of repression, that means the government tried to suppress this particular solidarity movement. But in the end, it had to start negotiating with the union. Particularly roundtable talks between the government and the solidarity-led opposition led to semi-free elections in 1989. By the end of August, a solidarity-led coalition government was formed, and in December, and Lex Walesa was elected as the president of Poland. So since then, it has become a more traditional trade union. That so far as the origin is concerned, the solidarity movement of Poland was one of the most dramatic development in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, and it was not a movement that began in the 1980s, but rather a continuation of working class. So the Polish October of 1956 did not begin with the Stalin death in 1953. In fact, Poland was quite calm in stark contrast to the other Eastern Bloc countries, and while demonstration took place in that Plzeň and Czechoslovakia, and a revolt was taking place in East Germany in that mid-June. So this is the that history of solidarity movement, that why the solidarity, a non-communist trade union, they started its revolt against the then government. So far, the most of the work in revolutionizing Poland was done by the workers, and that solidarity group was consist of workers. So where was the that police intelligentsia that seemed to disappear from the landscape after 1950, and the it was always there. While it was respected by the workers, the police intelligentsia had not worked very hard to unite itself with them. A social split existed that made the intelligentsia feel somewhat superior to the workers. So that was the main thing why the uh, the movement started, and what was the real reason that solidarity organization move against the government. And this movement could success through non-violent the movement. The victory of the movement that changed the history of Poland was the world's most striking display of people's power against the oppression since that Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi striking. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi shook the foundation of British rule in India. So here is the important thing is that non-violent that movement after Gandhi, that approach has its impact not in India but also throughout the world. Because the particularly the solidarity movement of Poland is the example that how the Gandhian approach of non-violence that gave the fruit to the workers' union, one of the ancient union, workers' union. So for a century and a half, the British controlled India by having Indians collaborate in running the Raj. Likewise, for 30 years, the communists in Poland kept the lead on a discontent by co-opting the reforms and isolating the disrupting voices until another way to oppose oppression was found by disengaging from the state and engaging the people. So, if we look at the components of solidarity, then we see that each of them played out in very different ways. First of all, it's a national liberation movement, like in India. In India, so we had also national liberation movement. And the example is the 1920 that the non-cooperation, the civil disobedience, and the White India movement. This is the national liberation movement. And in the Poland, that in the past national liberation movement, it was an unprecedented success. Poland liberated not just itself, but all the other nations of the former Soviet bloc. Certainly, that Hungary, that seized republics, and a role to play, but without solidarity, both in 1980 to 81 and in 1989, the process would have taken much longer. Further, as a movement for democracy, solidarity was also a huge success. Again, I'm telling the for the movement for democracy, solidarity, which is a workers' union, trade union in Poland, was also a huge success. Solidarity paid a steep price for this success. It fell apart in the process of creating pluralistic democracy. If solidarity had remained united, perhaps the post-communist would not be as strong as they are today. But this would not be a pluralistic democracy. However, several lessons emerged from the solidarity as a success. Firstly, there is no substitute for the will of that tyrannized population to retake the control of its own destiny. So, second thing, the even the most doctrinaire and rigid regime has internal that fissures which widen on the trace. So solidarity's pressures brought the conflicts with the policy communism to the surface. So finally, the universal ideals, democracy, and social justice can only be achieved in culturally specific forms. Poland's Catholic and secularist, aware of the police traditions, came together to reclaim their nation's history. So it is the fact of a solidarity movement in Poland. The work of the police worker, and that means the police worker, not police, POLISH. The work of the police worker and that of the police intellectual accomplished what many thought would never happen. Poland is a country with a history of offsprings, all of which fail except for this one, that is solidarity movement through non-violent. No other movement connected the police intelligentsia and the police worker. Would policy that insurrections have worked earlier in the history? If this was also the case, one can always second guess, but it is clear the changes that occurred in Poland due to this solidarity movement occurred because of the intellectuals working with the workers. So the intellectual behind the workers of solidarity radio, so for which the particular movement could succeed in Poland. They had the vision and the workers had the mass to demand that vision to become a reality. This is the case in that Poland, the solidarity movement, which is the glowing example of non-violent movement and its success. The solidarity that is an organization of a trade union, it is the workers' union, but they had a mass. They were not given the proper rights and privileges. But they were only the police workers. But when they started the agitation and movement, it was supported by the intellectuals of that state. So, because the intellectual had the vision, and how this vision will be that mitigate. So it was the very that aim of the solidarity movement. So the workers, those who have joined in the solidarity organization, they were mass in number. To demand that the through this mass, the intellectuals, those who are behind the workers, they demand that a vision to become a reality. ତାଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ ଦୂରଦୃଷ୍ଟି ଥିଲା ଯେ କିଭଳି ଭାବରେ ଏଠି ଆମେ ସ୍ୱାଧୀନତା ଆଣିବା ତାକୁ କମ୍ୟୁନିଷ୍ଟ ରେଜିମ୍ରୁ କେମିତି ଆମକୁ ରକ୍ଷା କରିବା, so that could be possible due to the particular movement. So this is the Poland case. So with this MGP 7, the non-violent movement after Gandhi and the different topics and the end block, the global non-violent movement. So that could realize after thorough observation from Unity 1 to 16. So the learner, they are informed the tomorrow class the sharp 7 p.m. and it will start that MGP 8. Now, is there any doubt you may ask? Hello, dear learner. Is there any doubt? Hello. Hello. Dear learner, is there any problem or any doubt? You may ask. Otherwise, the meeting will be fluid.